Ask it about a study, a specific one. It gives you the title, the authors, the journal, the year. Everything sounds perfectly real. Confident, specific, formatted exactly like something you could go look up. One problem: that study doesn't exist. Not a guess, not a rough estimate softened with a maybe. A completely invented answer, delivered with the exact same confidence as a correct one would have been. Here's the part that should bother you more than the mistake itself. It didn't hesitate. Not for a fraction of a second. Nothing in its tone gave it away. You'd think a system built on almost the entire internet would know the difference between a fact and a fabrication. It doesn't. Not the way you're imagining, because it was never checking a fact in the first place. It was doing something else entirely. Something that most of the time happens to look exactly like knowing. That's why it can sound incredibly certain, even when it's completely wrong. Because what feels like knowledge is often something very different. Here's what's actually happening underneath. The model isn't asking, what's true? It's asking a much narrower question. Given everything written so far, what word is most likely to come next? Over and over. One word at a time. Each choice is shaped by patterns learned from an enormous pile of human writing. Books, articles, conversations. All of it compressed into statistical relationships between words. Sounds surprisingly simple. That's it. That's the whole engine. No database of verified facts sitting underneath, ready to be checked against. No built-in fact checker quietly comparing the answer to reality before it gets typed out. Most of the time, the most likely next word also happens to be the correct one. Because most human writing is in fact accurate, and those are the patterns the model absorbed. But most likely and true are not the same thing. They just overlap often enough that you rarely notice the seam, until they don't overlap. Ask about something rare, an obscure name, a detail buried deep in a niche corner of knowledge, a question nobody wrote much about, and the model still has to answer. It doesn't get to raise its hand and say, there's no data here. Not unless it's been specifically taught to recognize that kind of gap. So it does what it always does. It predicts the most plausible sounding continuation, built from whatever nearby patterns it has. Confident language, it turns out, is just another pattern. A very common one, in fact. Certainty sounds a specific way in human writing. Direct, unhedged, specific, full of exact-sounding details. The model learned that pattern just as thoroughly as it learned everything else, because confident sentences are everywhere in its training data, which means a wrong answer and a right one can come out sounding identically sure of themselves. Same tone, same structure, same total absence of doubt. That's the part most people never realize. Fluency and knowledge aren't the same skill. One is about assembling convincing sentences in the right order, with the right rhythm. The other is about whether those sentences correspond to anything real, out there, in the actual world. A model can be excellent at the first, without any built-in check on the second. The two were never wired together in the first place. There's no deception happening here. Deception would require knowing what's true and choosing to say something else instead. It only has the pattern. The pattern doesn't come labeled real or invented. Both look, from the inside, exactly the same. So, can this be fixed? Yes. Sort of.
Some systems now pause to search or retrieve real documents before answering, cross-checking against something outside their own memorized patterns, instead of relying purely on what they absorbed during training. Others are trained specifically to recognize the edge of their own knowledge and say, "I'm not sure," when a question sits outside reliable territory. Both help. Neither solves it completely.
Teaching a prediction engine to recognize the edges of its own knowledge turns out to be much harder than teaching it to sound fluent. Fluency was the easy part, almost a side effect of reading enough human writing. Knowing what it doesn't know is a different skill entirely. One that has to be taught on purpose, deliberately, and even then, imperfectly. So the next time it answers instantly, without a flicker of doubt, remember what that confidence actually is. It's not a signal that something is true. It's a signal that the sentence sounded like the kind of thing that's usually true. Those are close enough, most days, that you never think to check. Until the day they're not. And by then, you've already believed it. That's not a flaw someone forgot to fix. It's what happens when you build something to sound right and never quite finish teaching it what right means. Maybe that's not really a story about AI at all. Maybe it's about how easily any of us, human or not, mistake a confident voice for a correct one.